Alright everyone, I'm going to talk about meeting Patrick Stump. I met him on technically 10/10, the day after the concert, because it was after midnight. I just got done talking to him less than 15-20 minutes ago. He's seriously one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I walked up and didn't realize it was him, and he kept checking his watch, and I'm like, oh god, I'm keeping him from getting to his next, venue, and, I'm like, oh god, what do I do? Because I really want to talk to him. And then I just babbled like an idiot. I'm like, oh my god, you're such an inspiration. Oh my god. And I'm like, ah. And he's like, oh no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I'm like, at least I'm getting words out, which is a lot more than I think I do. And he just laughed. And then, so me and my friend Rose weren't wearing shoes, we were wearing socks. Yes, this is the sock I wore downtown Reno. Bad idea, because you'll step on glass. And what else? Like needles and stuff. It was so funny because we were talking and I'm like, he's like, well, why'd you go barefoot? I'm like, well, Rose went barefoot. So, I had to, I had to go with her because, it's the right thing to do. I have to support a friend. And he's like, oh man, I get that. Solidarity, solidarity. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's talking to me. Kind of freaking out. I mentioned the word fangirling once. Oh. And then so he was like, and then I'm like, yeah, you just gotta be careful you don't step on a needle. And he's like, yeah, I got that from this place. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. Because I was just like, well, Reno is trashy, but we're a good trashy. And it was just so awesome. And I just kept repeating, you're such an inspiration, you're such an inspiration. And I brought up Andy, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's like, yeah, I just use my blog, because I told him about Tumblr. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, people put me with shows that I haven't even seen and all this stuff on Tumblr and pictures and stuff, and I'm like, I don't get it. I'm like, I'm like, you have a crazy fandom. He goes, not that from what I've seen. I'm like, oh no, you have a very crazy fandom. And I'm like, don't go on Tumblr. Don't go on Tumblr. And he's like, I only use it for answering questions anymore. And I'm like, it's still, don't go on Tumblr. It's bad. If you think about it, all the things we have and everything, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Patrick Stump. Anyway, still fangirling. But he was like, seriously, and I'm like, yeah, well, I was talking about how, I really want to be a tech, and, and how my friend Rose is managing her brother's band and everything. And, he's like, yeah, that's how you get started in the music industry. You start out with, a friend of a friend, or a brother, or a friend, or, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you start out like that. And it's like, yeah, I figure. I'm like, I have a band that wants me to go on tour with them and everything, and I'm like, okay, yeah. And then, so he kind of gave me a funny look, and I'm like, what? I can't be talented? Gosh. I didn't really do that, but that was my thought. So, there was that, and then, Zach came up, and he's a tall guy. He's pretty intimidating. He was glowering because Forrest had run up, and he was holding Rose's boots. And Rose's boots, and he was, glowering, and he was tossing this, it was like a purple or orange, Powerade, or not a Powerade, a vitamin water. And he was tossing it back and forth, and we were like, oh god, he's gonna come kill us. And I'm like, he walked up and I'm like, you're intimidating. And he just starts cracking up. Patrick starts laughing his ass off. And he hugs Zach, and he's like, it's okay. And then Zach turns around and he walks back a few steps and he comes up and he's like skipping and laughing and everything, and I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, yes. Best moment ever. And then like there was that, and then like he's like, well, you know, we've got to get going soon, and I'm gonna have to start charging you. And I'm like, dude, I can barely make rent. What makes you think I can pay you? He just looked at me like, oh. I'm like, yeah, go there. But it was just funny, and I don't know. I think seriously, the thing that scares me the most is, yes, I'm gonna quote Mr. Stump here himself, but you're like porcelain, and if, oh God, it's like porcelain. This porcelain song, and hold on, I will pull up the lyrics to that because I don't remember them off the top of my head at the moment. Porcelain lyrics. Patrick Stump. Anyway, so it's like, if he had been a complete jerk, then I probably would have went home and cried. I'm about to cry right now, but it's tears of joy. I would have been crying like tears of sadness because he wasn't what I thought he was. And you know, Patrick has been one of my favorite members since ever. I mean, if we're talking like people that wanted to, you know, make the world better, or made me want to make the world better and impact the world, it'd be him. And I was like, okay, so here's the lyrics. I don't think I'd ever want to meet you because you're like porcelain, and I think it would crack if I found out you were a brat. Stay perfect. And the thing is, he did stay perfect. He was everything I thought he would be, plus more, because, you know, he was funny. He was sweet. He was a little bit shy. You know, he kept checking his watch, but, you know, I expected that because they had a venue to go to. You know, from his tiny, tiny feet. By the way, they're like tiny. And I was like, your feet are so little. Aww. I so wanted to say that. But like everything. Like, from the way he was dressed to the way he did his hair to, you know, his voice. I think that was the hardest hitting thing for me, was not just seeing him in the flesh, but hearing his voice. Knowing that that was the voice that saved my heart from heartache and like all this other stuff. And like being able to hear that voice and hear it speak to me personally rather than just through a radio was like the biggest moment for me, because it meant more than you'd ever know. And like, I know it's stupid to get like emotional about it, but like knowing that his voice was speaking to me personally, it's like I know his voice better than I know my own sometimes. It's like I can go days and weeks without speaking to anyone, and like, but I always hear his voice, or I always hear Gerard Way's voice, because that's all I listen to. And it's crazy, because it's like, it means so much to me that I could hear him talking to me. And I told him, you know, Porcelain's one of my favorite songs you've done. And he said, I really like that song. And, you know, it's depressing that it didn't make it onto the album, but it didn't fit. And I'm just like, I love that song. There was another song that I really liked by Patrick, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Like, oh my god, I'll pull up the lyrics now and I'll be like, that's what it is. It wasn't Cute Girls. It was, Love, Selfish Loves. Love, Selfish Love is one of my other favorites, and I wish I had told him that, because Love, Selfish Love and Porcelain was like the hardest hitting for me. And like, you know, I relate to that on a daily basis. But like, just knowing that I got a chance to tell him that he's an inspiration and that he means so much to me really just changed my life. I know it sounds cheesy, but it really means the world to me. So, I guess I'll finish it up by saying this. Patrick Stump, you aren't porcelain. You are steel on a summer day. You are, no, let's rephrase this. You're like a stone. No, because that wears away and gets chipped. Let's go with steel. You're steel on a summer day. You're warm, you're solid, you're unbreakable. And like, you're perfect. You're exactly who I thought you'd be. And I thank God that you took the time to talk to me even though you had to go. You have no idea how much that meant to me. Especially with everything that goes on in my life. It means the absolute world. Thank you, Patrick. And I'm sorry for yelling down the alleyway, screaming, "Oh my God," and freaking out because I couldn't do anything else because I was freaking out. But thank you, Patrick Stump. Thank you a million times over. And like, I don't want to say I love you, but I want to say, if there was love in my heart for anyone, be it people I personally know and talk to on a daily basis, or people that I annoy through the internet, aka Andy Hurley, which I'm sorry for, Andy, if you ever see this, which I doubt. You are by far one of the most important people, and you have had such a major influence on my life. You're one of the reasons I'm a better person. Thank you. I'm gonna stop crying now.